Here are Series 4 of the Aureil Stormgate Invitational number 2. Spawning in the bottom left is another Aftermath gaming player. We saw Snockstar, his teammate, dominate in his series. Can TheoRy replicate it as well? This is the blue Inferno player, TheoRy. And his opponent in the lower right-hand corner, we were so excited in Invitational number 1 to have him. Wasn't able to make it work out, but today we got him secured. The Brood War legend. This is Scan. Map number 1 here on Lost Hope. We do have both players spawning in the lower half of the map. So this does create for some interesting back and forth. A little bit of navigating on how things get moved through in these camps, because Lost Hope has so many of these valuable camps available, and especially if you're the Inferno player, you want to tap into those different camps just to maneuver around the map, to give yourself a huge boosted economy, all types of very, very good things. So as the Vanguard player, if you can harass and stop your opponent from taking these camps for free, that makes a huge impact on your opponent's economy. But on top of that, the way that these camps spawned, the speed tower actually is very accessible here for TheoRy. So that could line things up for a very quick attack into Scan's main base, who has opted to take a command post first, is followed up with a double barracks, staying on tier 1 tech so far. I think that's a smart choice. But an Iron Vault opening out of TheoRy, we have brutes I'm gonna say zooming around the map right now, because they do have a lot more mobility with that speed camp. But TheoRy is going to capitalize on getting these camps that provide so much good resource coverage. Yes, obviously the health tower is useful because it provides the health regen passively, but it's the slimes that provide a decent amount of luminite for every kill. That is what TheoRy is seeking. And if he can make the most of that economic boon in the early stages of the game, that just catapults him forward and allows him to play exactly the kind of game he would like to. Now, Scan, no slouch, has a little bit of SimCity here to try and keep fiends out of his main base, at least forcing them to run all the way around, is starting to produce Lancers. One thing to note, the Lancers have a little bit different interaction with the Infernal players at this current moment in the game. Of course, we just got a balance patch yesterday. If you'd like to read about that, !patch in the chat will take you to the holiday balance patch page where you can read all about the different changes. But most importantly, in this specific matchup, two major changes. The brutes were given a little bit more damage, especially so they can dance with the Lancers a little bit stronger in the early game. And Magmadons had some damage rework as well. I believe they do a little bit more bonus damage to heavy units specifically. So we'll have to see if that has any major implications for this specific matchup. But right now it is just a small amount of Lancers, and it's actually a quick jump into Exos as well. We are seeing quick draw hustle being researched on top of that. Still tier 1 tech, so no jump up to any tier 2 structures at this point, but just like his teammate, a quick Harbinger drop. And especially with this orientation on the map, you as the Inferno player have such a quick run into the main base of your opponent. And that can be really, really difficult to deal with, especially for Scan as he pushes out and tries to harass on the opposite side of the map. Now, this is a decent army force here. I don't think that TheoRy can undersell this defense. This is a lot of units that can put out a decent amount of DPS if he's not careful, but he's going to try and find damage on the opposite side of the map. I don't understand why this was a joke, but this Harbinger is just taking free damage right now. He's so focused on this defense on the opposite side of the map, but now gonna finally try and get things taken care of. Instead, that flat cannon should be able to keep that at bay. And suddenly TheoRy, with an opportunity to have an advantage and deal damage to his opponent, not able to make that work. He has to bring everything back home for the defense. And suddenly this is a much less advantageous position to try and play into. TheoRy does have pretty good control of these camps. He doesn't have the vision in the center, but owning that health tower, eliminating some of the health regen from his opponent was a good play in theory, but wasn't able to execute it the way that he hoped. So instead, both players are going to take a step back. Third base already secured here for Scan, as he is able to start adding into his production. TheoRy has some additional Therium mining that he's going to tap into, making use of the Luminite tower on the high side here as well. Very, very important as he continues to manipulate his way through this game. And now the mobility of that Harbinger is going to be useful here. It's not as if this doesn't provide good usefulness. Sure, the initial cheeky drop was defended, but every time this Harbinger hits the ground, it does put out a ring of shroud, which with these gaunts that do have plague axes, this allows for a very, very nice use of just temporary shroud in general, or you can use it to put down an effigy and give yourself some permanent shroud. So very, very good utilization of the resources at hand for TheoRy. But Scan's in a really, really lovely place right now. He's got 3 base saturation here. Going to grab that machine lab as well. We are starting to see med techs being added into the army composition. I love seeing the flat cannon here. Flat cannon with the solar habitat. Solar habitat usually boosts the production speed of buildings for Vanguard, but it does also increase attack speed as well. So this flat cannon now able to be way more efficient in the defense of his different mineral lines, forcing TheoRy into a much deeper commitment if he wants to try and get to harassment damage on the opposite side of the map. So it's fun to see these army sizes stay really, really close to each other. 118 to 116. This is it's a sizable army here. The med tech offer a ton of staying power for Scan. So Scan able to maybe fight in a more difficult position simply with the support units in tow. And they are a little tanky as well. I mean, they've got 200 health compared to the 130 of the Exo. Lancers have 260, but that makes a little bit more sense. Those are naturally more front-leaning units. We do have tier 3 though, an Elder Shrine just now finishing up here. We do have a Shadow Cleft and we have Seismic Slam. So the Harbinger is going to be a part of this army composition for the foreseeable future. Now that Harbinger Seismic Slam allows the Harbinger to drop. It deals a stun. I think it's like a 2-second stun. Yeah, and then increases the shroud coverage by 100% as well. So this will still be a very useful unit to try and create and force an engagement against his opponent. But Scan, on the other hand, I believe has the resources that he needs for additional units here. Mitigative Guard, that's that tier 3 upgrade for the Lancer. It just does a flat damage reduced by 2 upon being damaged. So those Lancers just get more and more strong. And where are we at? It's just 1 Magmadon still at this point. Wow, look at the radius of that shroud. That's a crazy amount. On top of the fact that there are Spriggans and there are Gaunts. The Gaunts have their full upgrades here. Reaper's Rush available. We don't have any Brute upgrades, but it's been a while since we've seen professional players utilize those Brute upgrades. I think a lot of players have the perspective that those cost and time value upgrades just aren't worth it. But it's been a while since these two players have really interacted with each other. It seems like TheoRy wants to force the issue. This is a dead even army supply, 194 to 188. Habitat's going to be able to scout this army out. There are Vulcans that come into the mix here. No Weavers to pull. The Weavers did get a little bit of a nerf, so it wouldn't be surprising to see the Weaver not included in a major capacity. TheoRy does not see a huge angle to try and fight in here, so he is going to back off. All of these units come streaming in. They just single file right here. I still think Weavers would be a good addition to this army. I don't think they'd be quite the same like mainstays. We are going to get a Nightfall infestation here on the front side of this army. Not a good position for TheoRy to fight into. Scan getting a good back off here so that way he doesn't expose these units, but it seems like Scan wants to try and force the issue here. He's going to push forward with his army. He sees that Magmadon. Magmadon is going to deal some decent damage, but it is going to have to force backwards as well, and that is not the direction that TheoRy needs to go here. Scan going to try and a micro through here. He does have a pretty decent surround here, using that Harbinger to stun all these units, and then the Magmadon's coming on through as well. They don't last very long, but their goal is just to try and deal some stun damage, and TheoRy falling apart here. This army is not able to stick around. Those Gaunts, once they lose their front line, absolutely fall apart, and they are not able to stick around. And the Fiend count was, if it existed, it did not survive at all. Scan able to push on forward here, 192 to 127. It feels as if he didn't lose a single thing here. This army just sitting in the speed camp. TheoRy, I think, kind of just feeling like, well, there's not a whole lot that I can do here. The brutes fall apart in a blink of an eye. Magmadon not able to get the damage that it needs to. These Vulcans able to stun it and stop it from dealing stun damage of their own, and TheoRy's gonna have to tap out. He needs to rethink how he approaches game number 2, but Scan with a strong push here cleans up game number 1. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me to see that we're getting more Iron Vault openings in our new patch. Of course, I've made mention a couple of times in previous series. We were blessed with a new patch just yesterday. So these players are navigating some nuances and differing matchups. It wasn't a crazy change. Not a whole lot was different, but still significant enough that players are making some changes on the fly here, or at least have had a chance to try and think, how do we want to navigate these moments? I think one of the things that we have not seen so far is the Weaver for the Infernal player. Weavers have been pretty standard in compositions thus far. And right now, I don't think we've seen a single Weaver today. They're a little bit more expensive. Are there visual changes? Yes. One of the biggest visual changes, if you can take a look at the trees got a little bit of a glow up, a little bit more detail. I know the Frost Giant team just yesterday on Reddit answered a whole bunch of questions. Their entire team did an AMA on the Stormgate subreddit. I definitely encourage you to check it out when you get an opportunity, because they did address a lot of the things that people have had as concerns for the direction of Stormgate, plus things that we can look forward to seeing coming down the road. All right, TheoRy trying to take advantage of these camps. Once again, Scan going for the command post first. And if you are going to play against a Vanguard player who is not going to have the same kind of army presence on the map at the early onsets of the game, you really need to find a way to capitalize on the camps, especially since it's such a small map. But I think Scan even managed to take a couple of at least the speed camp units, which is not great, considering this is where TheoRy needs to maximize his advancement in this game. There's 7 workers on the Therium here. That is a lot of Therium mining. Why are we getting so much Therium? What is it for? We don't have a mech lab or a mech bay right now. It's gonna be 2 barracks. More than likely, it's probably just going to be exo production once again. And this scout being incredibly annoying on the opposite side of the map. Scan trying to get as much harassment as humanly possible. And it feels as if TheoRy's momentum in the early stages of this game has fizzled out just a little bit. Because he's lost enough of these fiends, he can't really tackle any of the other camps. Not to mention, Scan has just enough back at home to protect against these little run-bys by the fiends. Some good Sim City, trying to block TheoRy out from being able to leap in and find increasing amounts of damage. There are going to be 3 Lancers moving on the map that could find some good, juicy targets of the Infernal player. But what direction are we headed here? We are seeing a Twilight Spire and a Ritual Chamber once again. So TheoRy going to go for that Harbinger push once again. This is a nice map for the Harbinger rush because it's just such a short distance to try and get to the opposite side of the map. Ooh, with those trees knocked down, that means these Lancers are going to be able to dash on in. This is still just a 2-base economy out of the Infernal player as well. So a bit of a tricky moment. Scan is going to be able to see that that 3rd base is not taken. This is a potential 3rd base location, but with the access to the Therium, this makes way more sense. So now we suddenly see TheoRy go down. I think Scan is going to just swing around just to be certain. He's going to be able to take that camp as well. Yeah, so gonna be able to take that camp, sees that there is no 3rd base, at least on that site, so has a sense of how he wants to navigate this moment. We do have Exos do have Quick Draw Hustle researched already. No kinetic redirection for the Lancer at this point, and it doesn't seem like it is on the way currently, but I wouldn't honestly be surprised if there weren't any Lancers brought in. But hold the phone here. This sentry post is not completed at this point, but it is just rushed out. That is a crazy amount of build potential here to try and protect this location. Now, Scan is not mining at this location currently, and this Harbinger doing a good job of picking up these units and trying to eliminate some of the position. But 1 sentry post going down is going to be enough to shove this position back, as the Harbinger not going to find the kind of damage that it was hoping to. It did slow Scan down for just a brief moment. 3rd base location going on the left-hand side as well. So that has now been revealed. I think it looks like TheoRy's going to swing back in. Yeah, he is going to go up into the main base. I think that is the smart choice, especially since TheoRy more than likely will try and go down into the 3rd base location. That's where TheoRy is and where Scan is going to try and secure. I think he's got to be careful here. This can easily get picked off by Exos and not elicit the response that you are hoping to get. And these pulls are wonderful by Scan. Scan is a great spot to try and keep this position locked in. Utilizing that flat cannon with the solar charge has an increased attack speed. And that does just shadow weave back to the main base. So finding a little bit of damage here and there, mostly just trying to slow Scan down if at all possible. We still have a greater shrine, so no tier 3 just yet. We have any machine bays? No, it's just going to be additional barracks production out of Scan. So it's just going to be a bio army at this point. TheoRy right now going to try and take advantage of the camp location. I mean, this army is, I'm going to say, rather mobile, especially with the Harbinger. It could pick up some of those slower, bulkier units if he so desired. But right now, not really any major issues to deal with. There's no 4th base currently on the way for the Infernal player. I think economically, you would like to be more secured in your economy. If you're playing against a Vanguard player, I think going even, you're going to be behind, if that makes sense. TheoRy right now in game number 1 didn't have the position he wanted on the fights that ultimately cost him the game. So now TheoRy being a little bit more deliberate, trying to force some engagements and push his opponent out of position. But look at this flat cannon. The flat cannon has so much range. It's in a great spot too. That rampart is able to provide a little bit of coverage. It is low on health, or low on energy right now. This has a bit of a piece to notice, but it just doesn't seem like TheoRy can really jump on top of it. He's going to try and force the engagement here. Nightfall Infestation, but that flat cannon is just so strong. Just so strong. You know, well-placed position. Still no fourth base. I was going to say, maybe we've got one going up here. No, it seems like TheoRy wants to invest into this bush here, just trying to get more additional units out, starting to populate the Therium camp at that third base location. And instead going to swing up here and try and punish his opponent for being out of position as well. This is really a tight choke for these units to try and walk into. So there is a world where TheoRy might be able to get himself into the choke point that he would like to be, because of course those gaunts are going to be able to do a lot of good splash damage. But instead he's just going to settle for one barracks and he backs out. Craftsman on the opposite side though, this is going to find a lot more damage where these gaunts can start to multiply the fiend count. There is a habitat that does go down. Scrapyard is going to get protected. Ultimately that is going to fly back and away as well. Both players sitting on 3 base economy. TheoRy multiplying his unit count. There is a Magmadon being brought back in, but once again, that Magmadon has to find specific damage if it wants to interact with this army, because this army is largely exos. There are a few lancers sprinkled throughout, but ideally you really want the Magmadons to engage against lancers. But that's a really good pick off here, grabbing that flat cannon. Now all of a sudden this base is a lot more exposed. Fourth base going to go down as well for TheoRy as he starts looking forward on the map. And this becomes kind of an interesting situation for Scan. Scan is slowly losing the supply battle. I mean, a lot of it is because of the multiplication of these fiends. Grabbing that health camp is no slouch either, but look at the map. It's just a sea of red. All of these advantage points are covered by the red Infernal player, but right now Scan gonna try and wrestle some of this back. Ideally, where do we head? We just head to additional upgrades at this point. We got MedTech Adept training. That's going to allow for healing of mechanical units, and with those Vulcans now being added into the mix, that's going to be very, very useful. Once again, I mean, interesting to see how the Weaver change is impacting this army composition. I still feel like the Weaver has the benefit of being able to pull some of these Vulcans out of position that's absent in this current army. But sometimes you gotta roll with what brings you the most amount of joy. Flat Cannon has been replaced in the natural line. The Spriggans have been broken off, and those are gonna try and fly into the main base. So now it seems like TheoRy gonna try and engage in 2 different spots, really pull his opponent apart, and these could find some decent damage, especially since they do bonus damage to those heavy structures. And now Spriggans are going to try and find a way to weaken the defense in the natural expand. Bob overcharge to try and keep those Bobs on the job, and it seems like the flat cannons are going to get really, really low. That does get picked off, but now the army is able to be pulled back. TheoRy actually abandoned the front line with his main army. A bit of an interesting choice there, especially since the Spriggans were able to break the flat cannon in the main base and pull the entirety of the army back into the main. So loses a little bit of the position, but hold the phone here, and it's going to be an engagement on the right-hand side. We can see that Harbinger allowing for so much shroud spread, but the Vulcans with those nano swarm heals, that's going to keep everything topped up as long as humanly possible here. TheoRy finding some damage, but he needs to find more than this as the reinforcements are coming in from the main base. Trying to get onto that mineral line, or the Luminite line, excuse me, would be much more valuable, but look at the swing. TheoRy loses so much supply for almost no gain. And I think, did he lose all the Spriggans? I think the Spriggans are gone. I think the Spriggans were dealt with in the third base location, that's devastating for TheoRy. There are a few Spriggans being brought back in, but Scan with an incredible hold here, utilizing all of the tools at his disposal, keeping the protection in these different spots. It did come at the cost of some of these Luminite workers in his main base, so it wasn't without damage, but right now Scan has the stronger army. He has survival protocol on these exos, which means once every 2 minutes they can survive fatal damage and stick around for an extra couple of seconds. Think of it like if you've ever played Pokemon and you use the focus sash, and if those units get knocked down to 1 hit point, they just stick around. The Vulcans are the heroes of this story. They also have peak performance as well, which allows them to jump forward with their jump jets and instantly deal their maximum amount of damage. The way the Vulcans fire, they have these little mini guns and they kind of spin up over the course of 2 to 3 seconds. And once they are allowed to fire non-stop, they will deal their maximum amount of damage total. With this peak performance, you just jump forward and you get that instant benefit. Gosh, only now. Oh, wait, no, that's the 5th base. I was going to say only now is he getting his 4th. No, he's got the 4th base towards the front, but I think Scan is going to force the issue here. He knows he had a great defense, and now it's time to take that and make it an offense. So starting to get those mini guns spinning here. We do have a Shroud Stone manifestation. That's going to provide just a moment of support, but these Gaunts just can't stand up to the miniguns of the Vulcans. There is a dragon on the field here. The dragon can provide a little bit of damage. A good Magmadon leaps forward here, grabs a little bit of stun power, but those aren't allowed to stay around for very long. Instead, it is going to be the Flayed Dragon dropping infestation on the entirety of this army, but is it going to be enough? I don't believe it will be. Every time these units die, they do spawn 3 fiends, but that's not going to be nearly enough to deal with this. GG is called, and Scan with a strong game number 2, showcasing why he's one of the best RTS players in the world. Chad, I have to tell you one thing that brings me so much joy. Can I tell you what the 0.2 patch brought me? It brought me Alt-Tab music in the background. I'm so happy because before I would Alt-Tab and it would just get silent, just dead silence. It's like I was forced to listen to my own thoughts. No, that's not allowed. So now if I Alt-Tab to change a window or to check a resource, there's music that keeps playing and I love it. So shout out to Frost Giant. I feel like they listened to me. And even if they didn't, they're just like, Rushi, it's not about you. It impacted me, and I'm grateful for that. So usually Gerald lurks around in these chats. Thank you, Gerald. Pass along the good word. Okay. Ooh, a much earlier shrine here out of TheoRy. I think he just wanted to try and match his opponent. Because, I mean, Scan has spent so much energy into just doing his command post first build, which, once again, has done. So we see a little bit of rotation here by TheoRy, trying to capitalize on the camps out on the map. Because, again, when your opponent opens up command post first, it is just not possible for him to have the lancers needed to get out onto the map. And this is a large enough map that you can kind of split it down the middle and really take control of your side of the map one way or the other. But I think holding on to that health tower would be impactfully important if it's possible to do so. I kind of like this. This is a cute little trick. That is a part of the zone. So if you can run a unit in there, that will attempt to secure it. But now Scan's going to be able to get out and try to make some of his own waves. Clearing this speed camp. What kind of progress are we going to? This looks like it's going to be the same build. We got Exos. Got the X's and the O's. They're shooting. Oh. Got Greater Shine up here for the Infernal player as well. Now, I wouldn't hate to see a quick third base out of TheoRy. Just simply because you've got good scouting potential and information, and it's not really been aggressive play out of your opponent. Now, I might say that. I might cast or curse myself here. No, that is going to be a quick third base. All right, let's see. We'll see if my brain is in the correct place here or not. So Scan does have a small hit squad here, not a overwhelmingly big army, but also, definitely a lot scarier now with the veterancy here, using that top bar energy to bring these Exos into life. So let's see, what do we have here? The Ritual Chamber is going to be harassed here. Right now, I mean, Plague Axes are done, so that is not a resource that TheoRy absolutely has to hang on to. Obviously, he would like it so that way he can get his Reaper's Rush, but it's way more important to try and deal with this army in its current onset here. Now, there is a Harbinger that will be able to navigate forward, but there are no units inside of it. I think TheoRy is just trying to tease the idea, hey, I have more units here than you think I do. And it's working to some degree. Scan is not trying to dive on in. He's utilizing this moment, though. He is grabbing a third base back behind all of this pressure. So this isn't for nothing. Even if Scan just walks away, he's able to secure his third base. But this is where I think TheoRy is going to benefit. I think he is going to be happy that he was able to squeeze out that third base. He starts expanding his economy a little bit further. And both players just kind of take a step back, except if you're TheoRy, who wants to try and come across. But a flat cannon still going to be very, very useful at defending against this Harbinger push. Ooh, it's going to get kind of pinched here if TheoRy is not careful. Flat cannon is going to be on the high side, so this is not as useful, but wow, look at all the damage it does onto those units. Is not only is it dealing bonus damage to light, but it also deals a decent amount of splash damage as well. So this base is already fully saturated. Scan is instantly on a 3-base economy. He's got a flat cannon in this location as well. TheoRy trying so hard to utilize this Harbinger to provide any amount of leverage for himself in this game, and Scan is just all over it. So instead, TheoRy's just going to have to try and settle in and see if he can outgrow his opponent. But again, it feels as if you are matching the base count of a Vanguard player, you might actually be behind. I think that is important to keep in mind. Okay, grabbing some of the camps here. It has access to the Ethereum camp and Luminite camp. That does offer a little bit of a boost economically. I think that is probably the best case scenario. And it looks as if he wants to try and take the siege camp here. Now, we haven't seen the siege camp taken yet today, but this would provide for maybe an interesting interaction. I think if anything, TheoRy can take advantage of forcing an engagement here, especially since this army is sitting out on the map currently. Oh, the Harbinger's actually going to get pulled back home. Oh, all right. Well, TheoRy did not like what he saw somewhere in this engagement, and now it's going to all rest on this siege camp here. He's just going to kind of target onto this army. This is actually a nice little position. for the V5 rocket launcher. You cannot control this siege unit, by the way. This is just purely run on AI, and its only goal is just to try and run at units as close as it possibly can get to. And this is now a bit of a scary engagement here. TheoRy going to try and capitalize on the moment. There are no static defenses here to help hold this position in. Going to use a Nightfall Infestation. That's a huge cloud that goes right over top of most of those very, very precious units. And suddenly Scan is not in a good position to deal with this. He's going to lose out on all of these medtech, and I think the medtech were the secret winners of that fight in previous matches, but not in game number 3. TheoRy finds the damage that he needs to move on forward and put pressure on this natural. Now, there are still a decent amount of exos that can get a decent amount of damage. However, if they are left to their own design without coverage and support, they fall apart really quickly to these Gaunts, and Gaunts are going to try and get on top of these Vulcans. The absolute damage that are coming out of this army here. TheoRy's in a much better position in game number 3, but he can't afford to get caught here. He really needs to make sure that this counts, and he's got to make it count right now. These Spriggan are doing a good job of slowing down these units, trying to bully everything into a corner. Flat Cannon gets picked up again, and it's instantly deleted out of this natural base. Suddenly, Scan doesn't have quite the same hold that he had in games 1 and 2. TheoRy needs to find his damage, and he needs to get this all the way put together. Bob overcharge, keeping these Bobs alive as long as humanly possible, but it seems as if TheoRy has broken through. The feed count has multiplied, and so too will the pressure on this natural base. That's where the high command lives. Scan has to tap out, and TheoRy is in this series once again. He secures himself a win in this best of 5. All right, TheoRy opening up very similarly to the first couple of games, where he is much less economically greedy. It's very possible that he might try and wrap something up here. Actually using an effigy on this camp as well. That is an interesting play. Trying to keep some white health on these units, but this scout has been intensely annoying. Trying to pick off some of the weakened units. Now he did grab one though, because he would only get experience on his veterancy if he secured the kill. So he actually did grab one. We're gonna have to see if we get a bit of different play style here in game number 4. Titan's Causeway is not a super small, not a super big map. It's right in the middle. It's the Goldilocks of the maps. So right now, a little bit of a shift into Ironvault Conclave. See a second barracks going down here for Scan, and then this ends up being ideally like the exact same opening for both players. Realistically, this works out better for Scan, who has found a lot of success in this series going for that type of play. But I think with a map that has the potential for quick play like this one does, I think it could work out for TheoRy. But check this out. Scan gonna open up the center here. I wonder if that's just gonna be quick lancers. They're just gonna charge right across the center of the map. I'm a little surprised the sentry post didn't go down here, because buzzsaw cannon with a little bit of repair support could be useful in many different ways. But I have a feeling that we are going to see Scan collect some of these camps and kind of situate himself a little bit. Maybe start using the center as a vessel for attacking. But TheoRy is aware He has seen what's up. He scouted that both sides are open. And that's now going to be, I mean, that's good information. That's great information for the Infernal player to know. We'll have to see what comes down the works here as we get more barracks added in here. It's going to be 4 barracks play. We do have a bio lab. Can need some exos. Yeah, this is all stock standard. Okay. So right now, the Fiend's just doing a little bit of scouting information, grabbing camps wherever possible. Scouting information has been done for both of the third base locations. So TheoRy is aware that this is still just a 2-base timing for scan. Now, third base does go down, not in the valuable double Luminite location. This is just a little bit more protected ish. I should say it's protected in the terms of it's further away from your opponent. This is still open and available to allow for some harassment, but there's no flat cannon here in the main base, and this army is a bit out of position here, so we're gonna have to see if this attack can get some decent damage. Bringing some brutes along as well to soak up a little bit of target fire from the Bobs. An interesting play here. Now we do have Plague Axes. The Plague Axes have allowed us to produce just a little bit of units, but instead it's going to be Scan moving across the map here with an army of his own. Is a decent Sim City here for TheoRy to try and fight into, but it all comes down to where these units try to engage. Oh, a Nightfall Infestation here, going to try and drop on top of these units, and it does catch a few of those on the side here. Magmadon saving its stomp for this exact moment here, getting some decent damage done onto those Lancers. You can see how it kind of chews up those Lancers a little bit. As long as the Magmadons stay with the Lancers and don't get sucked into the Exos, they tend to find a decent amount of damage, all things considered. Now these Gaunts are going to benefit from fighting on Shroud. There we finally get the Harbinger, which has been softened up quite a bit by the Exos here. This is still a scary moment. The Harbinger does end up going down, so there's no more portable Shroud at this point. The Exos are able to pick off some of these frontline units, and only 2 brutes remain. And if it's going to be brutes versus or Gaunts versus Exos, that can be a scary moment for both players. That's one that can swing in a heartbeat. Overall, I think TheoRy in a good position here. He does lose some valuable units, but does hold on to the position. Both players are able to secure their third base location. Starting to see some imps rallied to this location. We got a sentry post going down in the third base as well. I'm surprised at the brazenness of no sentry post in the main or the natural expand. But you know it's all good. So TheoRy's going to come out here to the center of the map, try and secure that Luminite tower in good place. Try and hold a little bit of an advantage. The armies are going to rotate into each other. Scan in a pretty decent location here. Does have a pretty strong saturation at the third base location. 13 workers on the Therium camp. I'm going to grab that machine lab. Start advancing the tech forward just a little bit. I think, yeah, I was gonna say Central Command has been at the natural almost consistently today for Scan, and this game appears to be no different. So this Vision Camp is providing the information needed. Oh, just a split second before that was gonna flip over, but Scan able to grab this Therium camp and try to wrestle back a little bit of the economic position. Ooh, this is going to be a strong fight here. I don't know if TheoRy wants to fight here. The Lancers are instantly on top of those Gaunts, and they get so much damage done, but turns into a really nice concave for TheoRy. Is this the battle that he wants? It appears as if he does. He doesn't have anywhere really to retreat to, and the Lancers are going to work into the backside of this army, and being able to deal so much damage to those Gaunts is good, but TheoRy with some really good trades. The Spriggans doing their job, slowing everything down here in this army, dropping an effigy on the backside. These Gaunts trying to multiply the army size as much as possible, and TheoRy senses a little bit of blood in the waters, trying to push on forward here. The final med tech does fall as well, and it's just Exos at this point, and with some Spriggans and with the Brutes in this army, this feels like a strong push here. I think we might be getting a game number 5, and we absolutely are. GG is called. TheoRy with the quick decision making. He manages to move himself into the game number 5 to even it all up. All right, good hide on the imp here. Ooh, I love the early economic play. I think that is the right choice. Scout hasn't found any steals just yet. We'll keep the Scout on selection, but nope, I think he's just gonna get bullied away. Man, TheoRy's really powering up here, trying to make the most of this opening engagement. Now somehow the Scout still managed to get this radioactive blood. I suppose it was around at the very first kill, so that makes sense. Not claiming that camp could be an interesting choice. Sometimes they ping, and I'm curious what they're pinging. He pinged to the middle. Maybe that's where he's going. Okay, Scout still not able to land any steals, which is totally fine. When you use the alt hotkeys to steal, sometimes you randomly ping. Ah. You know, that makes sense. Second barracks? Yep. All right, so this is going to be the same opener. It's all tied up. So what are we going to see for tech in game number 5 here? We do have a Greater Shrine already down. I was going to say, would expect to see a Ritual Chamber once again. Scouting taking place here, checking to see if Scan has taken his 3rd base. He has not at this point. In fact, only just now is the biokinetics lab going down. This feels maybe a little late to my brain in the previous couple of games, but it's also very possible that I'm just thinking about it. So we would have to go back to the tape and see. What kind of timing took place? All right, so no research coming out of the biokinetics lab just yet, despite the fact that there's a lot of Luminite here sitting in the bank for Scan. Scan is focused. He's got to be focused on something. So that is a lot of money to just have it chilling around. Okay, he is going to send out some workers, try and grab his 3rd base location. Now this Fiend is going to scout it. That is a very, very good timing. Fiend's also going to try and just collect camps along the way as well, so not allowing Scan to kind of situate his position. Now 3rd base has gone down at the more forward positional base for TheoRy. Is that last bit of damage going to go? Yes, he actually takes the entire Luminite line and squashes the scout, not allowing him to dive into the main base. I mean, admittedly, there's not a whole lot happening up here. We're getting Reaper's Rush out of the Ritual Chamber, but I think not seeing the lack of production is important. And we have a Hellforge. This has not been on the cards as of late. What are we going to see coming out of the Hellforge? Or have we? No, we have. We have not seen this, though. Soulforge Ascendance. This has been the upgrade for Brutes that has largely been ignored since they nerfed it in the previous patch. This used to take about a minute to research, and it's now a 2-minute research, which is a significant amount of time, but it does offer bonus armor to Brutes. And when they split manually, they split into 3 Fiends instead of 2. Ideally, it's a very good unit, or it's a very good upgrade for this unit. However, a lot of players have commented that due to the length of the upgrade and the amount of investment that could go elsewhere, it's been largely ignored. But this is very interesting. We're getting kind of a different approach here. No Magmadons. It's going to be Hellborn. It's going to be Brutes and Gaunts. And that seems to be the army composition at this particular moment. Now, we're ditching the Harbinger drop. We're ditching the Magmadon play here at this point. So definitely a unique approach here in game number 5. We're going to have to see if that works out here. But since Scan is sitting on... well, I mean, is this a sizable amount of exos? Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. The Hellborn are really good at dealing with exos. We're going to see a high command to be brought in here as well. So tier 3 is on the way. I mean, without the overwhelming amount of Lancers, really, the Magmadon play isn't that great to begin with. Plus, these Hellborn, once they get the tier 3 upgrade, which we don't have yet, still sitting on a greater shrine, so still tier 2, but this has the Molten Touch upgrade that does a ton of damage over time and is really, really strong against large exo balls. But this is kind of a risky play. I mean, we made a comment earlier on in the cast that when you have such a quick turnaround for an event from a patch, in this case, it's been less than 24 hours. Sometimes you got to take a calculated risk, and it might pay off, but it might send you packing, and we're going to have to see what happens here. This is a pretty sizable army here. TheoRy is going to have a bit of an advantage, and now we do have those Hellborn starting to work away. There are a few Lancers that are being brought into the mix. Are they in production? They are in production as well, so the longer that this fight goes on, the better this goes in theory for Scam. But we do have a thinning herd here as well. The Hellborn are kind of slow, though. They don't fire as consistently as an Atlas or as another long-range siege unit like the Saber. If he gets caught in the middle here, this could be very, very awkward here. The Hellborn are on the left-hand side here. They're not attacking the main army, and I feel like every ounce of DPS has to go towards this army right now. The Hellborn starting to target down the main base here. I don't really think that that's the target that they should be going for TheoRy. He's going to lose out on his advantage, and as long as this fight continues to go on, more Lancers get brought into the mix, and the Exos continue to stick around. Not to mention there's a Vulcan that leaps on forward here, starts firing some very, very crucial shots here in the center of this army. TheoRy is not handling this very well. He's lost his shroud. There isn't a lot here. The bubble goes down onto the Vulcan as well, and things just continue to go back and forth, but that does thin the herd for those Lancers. A huge Nightfall infestation going down onto the bulk of this army here. Is there enough DPS to deal with this? Because once these Hellborn are exposed, they are not going to stand tall, and they are going to be tracked down, and TheoRy has to back up. He did not get the engagement that he needed. This push is over, and fortunately he's able to walk away. I think that was the best case scenario for anything other than an overwhelming win. That was That could have been a scary moment. Additional Hellborn being brought in, though. Do we have a tier 3 upgrade coming? No, there's still no Elder Shrine. This is still tier 2 tech, and I think that is a dangerous moment. I think that's dangerous. He really needs the upgrades, especially when his opponent is already at tier 3 tech. The high command has been brought into the fight. This feels like a very, very anxious engagement here. There is a Weaver. We have a Weaver in the game, folks. Wee woo, wee woo. This Weaver's a little bit more expensive, but it does have the option to pull some of these bigger units. A big Nightfall infestation here. That's going to try and force the engagement here, but once again, there's no tier 3 upgrade for those Hellborn, so every shot does damage, but it doesn't do as much as it possibly could here. These Gaunts trying to micro back and forth. No Harbinger to provide additional Shroud at this point. The Weaver has little impact here. It just falls apart in the front lines, and suddenly this army starting to shove forward once again. Additional Hellborn being brought in. They're at the 6 count right now, but we don't have any upgrades at this point. No Elder Shrine. This is still tier 2 tech. This is an all-in moment for TheoRy. He has to find a way to settle this in because there's a 4th base on the opposite side of the map for Scan. This is a moment. He has to find some damage, and he is struggling to make that happen. Another effigy goes down, some Shroud being introduced in. We have the 4th base starting to be saturated. This is a rough moment for TheoRy. He's up in supply, 148 to 118, but he's down in tech. He's down in economy. And every moment that ticks by, additional workers go. The Fiend has scouted the 4th base. That has got to trigger TheoRy into an all or nothing play here. He's got to find damage, and he has to find that damage now. Still no upgrades on the way. Still no Elder Shrine. This is tier 2 tech at its finest. But additional Weavers get brought in as well. Soul Ripper, this is the damage that gets dealt. This was changed. This was one of the big change. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. That is so loud here. Now we finally see a Lash coming into play here, pulling one of those Vulcans, trying to eliminate some of the DPS here. The Vulcans are going to just dash forward here. Now the Hellborn able to fire on top of those targets here. The Weavers all get picked off, but suddenly we see these Vulcan ripping through the Gaunts. The Gaunts just fall apart here, and the Hellborn are left exposed. Once again, they are on the run, but Scan does not have enough to push back as well. But I think that was enough to deal some lethal damage, just not lethal right now. That 4th base has been introduced. There is no 4th base for TheoRy. TheoRy still does not have tier 3 on the way. My goodness, the shots from those Hellborn are so big. But this is starting to look worse and worse for TheoRy as we can see those supply shifts taking place, 153 to 138. He's going to rotate around here and try and put some pressure on this 4th base, and maybe this works out. The army's actually caught on the high side of the map here. I think he needs to go in. He needs to recognize that this is a moment for him to strike. If he can kill this base off, that could be a good equalizer, especially since a Shrine going down in the center of the map here. Oh, the workers have been evacuated. Best case scenario for Scan, he loses the base, but he doesn't really lose the workers, as the workers of Scan are going to go to the lower right-hand corner and try and throw down a 5th base, as well as replacing that 4th base. The army has arrived for Scan. This is starting to feel, again, more and more like a do-or-die moment. Some of these higher veterancy Exos get caught up in the fray here. A little bit of bad pathing. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a little bit of a bait just to try and keep the army of TheoRy in place. But every time he can escape with these Hellborn, that is the best case scenario that he can possibly come up with. But these Vulcan just rip through the front line of TheoRy. And with an additional base in the lower right-hand corner, with the 4th base recovered on the map, and this army continuing to grow not only in size but in tech, this is starting to look better and better for Scan. Scan has done a great job of holding things in play. He has his mech base continuing to churn out more and more Vulcans. This is exactly where he wants to be. This is the type of tech that he wants to continue putting together, and peak performance is only going to extrapolate that as well. He's going to jump forward. He's going to have all the DPS he absolutely needs. And then this starts to multiply very quickly for the Vanguard player. Scan has got to be feeling in good position here. He is held so many times in the center of the map. TheoRy unable to break him. And the play into Hellborn and Weaver not yielding the results that TheoRy was hoping for at this point. Maybe one more fight could do it, but that's a lot of Lancers that are instantly going to run forward. The Weavers have to warp out the Shadow Weave to get back to safety. That is not a good sign unless you're Scan. And at that point, you just push on forward. So he's going to grab the energy camp. That's going to be great for his med tech. We can see those Nano Swarm putting in some work. And the base now secured by TheoRy in the center. Oh, surely he sees this. Surely he sees this. He's just going to leave it alone. I guess he wants additional energy. You know, that's fair. Well, I think this is going to be very, very quick. There's only now are we getting to an Elder Shrine at this point in the game. It's going to be very difficult to recover if you are TheoRy. I mean, he's doing a great job of holding tight with his overall supply count. He's at 201 to Scan's 225. But again, I think it's the type of army that suddenly becomes very, very important to realize. This is a very slow, albeit very, like, it could be very strong siege unit army. Oh, oh no, the Vulcans with the pathing. Quick, we have to channel everything we learned in kindergarten. Single file line. TheoRy, did he get the dragon? Yes, he did. He's got the money for the dragon. So I just noticed, I was like, he was kind of building up. Did he actually grab it? That could possibly be a catalyst for a switch here. This is a bulky army. This does clump up. If there ever was an army composition that the Hellborn could potentially deal with, it could be this army. We have Molten Touch, though, on the way. It's a little over 50% done. Needs to buy some time to get that secured. If he has it for this fight, that could be, again, that could be the tipping point. It could be enough, but Scan is on his way to a full build here. He's got 285 supply. He's almost maxed out. It's at the point where he's ready to just push on in and deal as much damage as he possibly can. We have to keep an eye on this Hellborn to see when this upgrade is going to be completed. Molten Touch is done. If there was ever a moment for TheoRy to try and fight, it's going to be right now, and instantly coats this army with a ton of Molten Touch. But now we see the Vulcans leap on forward. They're going to have their maximum DPS. We do see his shields up going, and look at the army supply plummet. 277 to 157. This was not enough to do it. A dragon was not going to take care of it. Molten Touch is not going to be enough. And suddenly Scan is pushing forward. He's on his way to the round of 8. TheoRy has held on as long as he can, and at the 19-minute mark taps out. Scan with a wonderful set of holds manages his way out of this series and prevents the reverse sweep. GG is called.